Glad to have you with us. This week, the House of Representatives commenced a series it has termed Sectoral Debate. Ministers were invited to speak in plenary. Questions and answers were also taken. Let's take a listen to that report.
Our cultures and tourism.
The Minister of Information, Culture and Tourism, Lai Mohammed, arriving at the chamber of the House of Representatives. He is here for the inaugural edition of what the House has termed sectoral debates on the country's economy. This first set of debates is focused on diversification of the economy. For the Minister, the tourism sector is one Nigeria must focus on. He touched on some of the challenges confronting the sector.
Another major problem is in the area of the allocation of resources. It is instructive that not one kobo was allocated for capital projects in culture and tourism in the entire 2015 national budget. Although the situation is slightly different in this year's budget, yet I want to say with all due respect that what is allocated is still a mere tokenism. This is one of the areas where the National Assembly can come in, perhaps to approve for us a supplementary budget for this critical sector.
Over the next 3 hours, the lawmakers reacted with questions and observations.
How much are we generating from tourism? And then if that is not enough, in view of the huge potentials that we have, how much can we potentially generate from tourism? And what steps are we taking to get there? Like, I want to see specific pictures of what you intend to do in the first year in office in order to boost revenue from tourism, in the second year, in the third year, and ultimately in the third, fourth year if you're in office. How much can we potentially generate as a nation from tourism? Now, if you need the Tourism Development Fund to be established, how much will that give you? And in what areas are you investing the money in order to improve our national revenue?
Tourism was generated a minimum of about 7% to the GDP. Honorable Speaker, it is not easy to ask me how much do I need for tourism to get a particular level. For what can I do in first year, second, third year? This, Honorable Speaker, is because there are many factors that will help tourism that are completely outside the portfolio of the Ministry of Information, Culture and Tourism.
The minister says this sector is unique.
It is the only sector that is pro-poor, pro-rural, and pro-underprivileged. It is the only sector that can employ those who normally will be unemployed. The only sector that you do not need to import the utensils or the tools. The industries already exist there. Thank you very much.
The Speaker has encouraged the Minister to forward the proposed bills needed to transform the sector to the House as soon as possible. The very next day, it is the turn of the Minister of Agriculture. He starts with some of the highlights of the sector.
We should be self-sufficient in rice in another 2.5 years. We should be so in wheat in about 3 years. We are now number 4 in cashew production worldwide, and we are earning good money for it. Last year, we made 242 billion naira from cashew nuts.
He also touched on the conflict between herdsmen and farmers and put forward his solution to the problem.
I assure you there is no other way of dealing with this problem but creating these massive grazing reserves all over the place. And we are organizing more meetings. We shall then bring legislation to this chamber, appealing to you to help us regulate the movement of animals. A day should come when we should absolutely stop roaming of cattle. They have no business roaming because we give them all the food and the comfort they want.
The lawmakers then put some questions to the minister. Most of the questions focus on the herdsmen-farmers conflict and when Nigerians should expect it to be resolved.
When will cattle grazing stop on the scale it is? I have told the President that we'll try and do our best in the next 24 months. We may achieve results earlier. I don't know if I can give you a date. The day the budget is passed, we'll set to work. It's a priority project. We don't want any more life lost. We don't want any more conflicts.
The minister also encouraged the House to look at the possibility of reviewing the local government system. He says rural development is key to the development of the country, and the local government must function for that to happen. The next minister to appear before the House of Representatives is the Minister of Trade and Investment. He starts with this overview.
That Nigeria's economy is actually more diversified than it seems. The much talked about oil sector, which has historically accounted for 3/4 of government revenues and as much as 90% of the foreign exchange earnings, actually contributes only 14% of the gross domestic product, the GDP. Agriculture, on the other hand, which contributes about 1/5 of our GDP, accounts for only a small fraction of our export earnings. The challenge before us, therefore, is this: how do we monetize and include some of these other sectors in our revenue base as a country? How do we boost non-oil exports so that we're no longer primarily dependent on the ebbs and flows of the oil market for our government revenues and foreign exchange? How do we take full advantage of the potentials of agriculture and agro-processing, solid minerals, information communication technology, ICT, entertainment, and other areas, to mention just a few, which elsewhere in the world have underpinned economies much bigger than our own?
He says the National Assembly should review some laws and practices to provide for an enabling environment for industry, trade, and investment in the country.
For ease of doing business, the Company and Allied Matter Kama decree requires overhaul to align it with the realities of the 21st century, as well as global best practices. And this is something we'd like to engage the House on. For MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises, to unlock their potential, which account for almost half of the GDP, like I said earlier, we need the National Assembly to fast-track work on the Independent Warehouse Regulatory Agency Bill and the Secure Transactions Immovable Assets Bill. When passed, these pieces of legislation will significantly improve access to funding for small businesses. On investments, to unlock investment in infrastructure, legislative reform is required in a number of areas, like the Railway Corporation and Postal Services Acts. It is only by reviewing these laws that we'll be able to guarantee much-needed private investment in these sectors.